morning. We're ready to start our next lesson in history. Let's go ahead and start lesson 29. This is going to be in our workbook, in our reader book on page 89. We just have 3 pages to do today. Now, yesterday we were talking about the growth of industry, and we talked about the railroad, we talked about the oil industry, the steel industry, Andrew Carnegie. We talked about Rockefeller. And the day before that, we talked about the changes in businesses and the changes in the education, things such as that. So today we're going to learn about the wealthy and the working class. Now, the wealthy, obviously, you know what the wealthy means. That's rich people, people that are very wealthy with lots of money and lots of things, lots of prestige. And then the working class would be people like my family. My husband goes to work every day. He has to work for a living. We are not wealthy. We probably are well off than some other people are, but I think that's considered the working class, those who have to work. They're not just given money from their parents or whatever. All right, so let's look at page 89. Now, I'm going to read these pages, but remember, you've got to follow along with me, okay? Sometimes I'm going to have you read yourself, but today I'm going to read with you. So let's go ahead and read. You follow along. We're on page 89. The growth of business in this time period made certain people very rich. Some wealthy people thought carefully about wise ways to use their wealth. Andrew Carnegie was one of these men. He didn't think that the wealthy should hold on to their wealth. When they died, their wealth would go to other people. Those people might not use it wisely. Instead, Carnegie said that wealthy people should use their wealth to help others while they were alive. But the world that we live in is a fallen world. Not all people gain their wealth in just ways. Not all wealth is used wisely. During that time in America, some big businesses misused their power. The United States government passed laws that tried to stop businesses from acting unjustly. Some of these laws stopped wrongdoing, but some of these laws hurt good businesses that were not doing wrong. As industries and businesses got larger, workers had to face changes. Workers used to work alongside their employers. Sometimes workers even lived in the same house as their employer. But in large companies, the owner might not know many of his workers. Some owners treated their workers simply as resources or machines for the company. But workers didn't like being treated like a resource. They thought that company owners made them work too long each day. Workers thought their workplaces were unsafe. They thought they were paid too little. They thought it unfair that the owner would cut their pay when he had more money than he could ever spend. Over time, however, these workers were better off than Americans who had lived in earlier times. Workers now made more money. They lived in nicer places. They could afford to buy better things. The workers enjoyed a better life because of big business. Their products were made well and cost less money. People with less money could buy nicer things. But in other ways, these workers also lived in harder times. Working in a factory was difficult and could be dangerous. If a worker was hurt by a machine, he couldn't work. He wouldn't be able to earn money to live and buy food. The employer didn't help him. For this reason, many workers lived in fear. A worker had little power to change things at a company. Workers had an idea. What if all the workers got together and demanded that their company make changes? The workers could say that they wouldn't work unless the company made the changes. This action is called going on strike. And that's what you see right here in the picture on the screen is some people on strike. Workers on strike united and formed groups called labor unions. Unions helped get workers together. They had to work together if a strike was going to be successful. Unions helped set up strikes. Sometimes unions were successful at making deals with companies. One deal might be for a company to improve the workers' working conditions. Sometimes the deal was to give workers better pay. Sadly, some union strikes were violent. Sometimes the strikers turned into a mob. They destroyed property and killed people. Men who liked to cause trouble were attracted to the unions. Sometimes company owners hired armed men to break up strikes. These strike breakers sometimes killed strikers during the fight. Another problem the unions created came from their own success. When a company had too much power, it could act unjustly toward its workers. Likewise, when a union had too much power, it could act unjustly toward the owners of the company. So, you can see that just like everything else, some things are good, some things are not good. So let's look back at page 89. You see that picture at the bottom, page 89? That's called the Biltmore House. And it's a house that was built by a man named George Vanderbilt in the late 1800s. I do believe he probably was a very wealthy man. So how did Andrew Carnegie think the wealthy should use their wealth while they were alive? To do what? To help other people. What were some things during this time in America that showed we live in a fallen world and people and businesses don't always act justly? Not all people gained their wealth in the right way, and not all people acted wisely with their wealth, did they? Because we do live in a fallen world, right? What were some things that workers of large companies didn't like? Thought they had to work too long, didn't get enough pay, they worked in unsafe conditions. Okay, so in what ways were the workers living in harder times than, say, before the Civil War? Their working conditions were probably a lot more dangerous because before the Civil War, most people just worked on their farm. And that was dangerous too, but not as dangerous as working here in a place, like a factory where you could get hurt. Look at page 91. That was the last page that we read today. What did the unions... Well, let's back up. What did some of the workers do to demand that their company make changes? They went on strike. Like these people in the picture. What did the workers say when they went on strike? They wouldn't work unless their demands were met, correct? So what did those workers who were on strike unite to form? Labor unions. And what did the unions do once they helped workers get together? They helped set up strikes when they needed to go on strike. They made deals with companies to make their pay more, or maybe less time they had to work, or to make their conditions safer to work in. But what were some of the problems when there was a strike? Violence. Violence was it, wasn't it? Okay, so let's go ahead. Today you have one page to do. There's actually 2 pages to do in your work text. I'm going to have you skip page 39. It's just writing a newspaper article. I'm going to have you skip that one because you don't need to do that one. Let's look at page 40. This is the study guide. Now you're going to have to use your book from the pages that we've read. It's going to be from all the way from where we started on page 82 all the way up to page 91 where we've been reading today. So your study guide will come from all of that, so you'll probably want to use your book. And then I want to get a picture of this because I am going to take a picture of it. I am going to grade it, so I need a picture of it, okay? All right, and that will be all your lesson for today.